And top of the day to you, ladies and gentlemen, as Chester Heston's Long John Silver used to say in the famous version of Treasure Island. I am making this video under duress. It was not my idea. Off color, I have a gun pointed at my head, so I will do it despite the fact that I firmly believe that it is unnecessary and it is on a subject that is very well known, probably better known to most American ship modelers than even to me. But here is a box of Artesania Latina's US ship Constellation. They believe the model to be representing the American frigate that was part of the first group of frigates authorized by Congress as a response to the Barbary pirate attacks on American shipping in the Mediterranean world. The mistakes, of course, begin even at the very start of this, on the cover. The ship was not built in 1798, it was built in 1797, though the commission was in 1798. Furthermore, this claims that the vessel existed until the 1890s, which also is, of course, incorrect. There was a lot of talk years ago whether the current Constellation, which is preserved after a fashion in Baltimore, is the same as the original frigate. Because if it is the same vessel, even after heavy repairing, then she would be older than the United States frigate Constitution. By now, this argument has been settled once and for all. The 38-gun Constellation, authorized by Congress in the 1790s, if I remember correctly, the act is from 1794, is not at all the vessel that is currently in Baltimore known as Constellation. The ship, the original frigate, was dismantled by 1853 after a rather long career. She was built just as the rest of the American frigates, larger than most contemporary 38-gun ships, because the United States of America could afford to build larger vessels. There were so few that finding crews that they had to be designed to be superior in size to anything else afloat of their respective classes. The philosophy was not new, the idea of these frigates was not new at all. In fact, neither was the 24-pounder frigate a new idea. Henry Happs Chapman is probably the person who first came up with the extra heavy gun frigates of the Bellona class, which were designed to fight the Muscovian fleet. And for this reason, they had to be larger, because Sweden could not afford as many ships as the Muscovites could afford. So the idea was not new. Then there is the anonymous manuscript from, it's actually a treatise, not a manuscript, from 1788, which also specifically recommends the abandonment of the old two-decked 44-gun frigates in favor of a single-decked large 44 frigates, which are almost the size of our USS Constitution. Although the treatise frigates are about 5 feet shorter than the average for the 44-gun American frigates. Still, the point is that this was not a new idea. It had been around, it had been used, it had been developed in Europe, and it was a good policy, so it was adopted in the United States. It is easy to build extra large ships when you have limited number of vessels to construct, and when you have, I wouldn't say unlimited manpower to man them. It is much easier to man 20 ships than, let's say, 700, which was a challenge for Great Britain. So that is why our frigates were larger than most others, probably more expensive to construct and to maintain and to sail, but they had individually to be able to outgun and outfight anything that they could not outsail. The same approach, the same philosophy was used also for the construction of 38-gun frigates, like, for example, the class of the Constellation. The name was approved personally by George Washington, who at the time was President of the United States, the first President of the United States. I will not discuss the kit itself particularly, but it claims to be based on the original ship. I have not been able yet to compare the lines drawings from the kit to the lines drawings of the original vessels. And Artesania Latina usually produces good quality. The cannon inside the kit box are quite nice, quite beautiful, and it even comes with 3 small figurines, probably officers, that can be painted and added. I have no doubt that the scale effect would be magnificent if you do it properly. Returning, however, to the story, in this version they mix the 2 vessels. By now, all American historians, and I believe this is well known among American ship modelers, the 2 vessels are completely different ships. The original Constellation, after a rather lengthy life, having managed to avoid being captured by the British, she survived until the 1850s. By then, she was in such a state that she was dismantled, and to replace the original frigate Constellation, the Sloop-of-War Constellation was constructed in 1854. She had a lengthy, though not particularly eventful, career. During the American Civil War, before that she had served in the slave fighting squadron on the African coast. Subsequently, she was in the Mediterranean. During the American Civil War, she served in the Mediterranean also, chasing Confederate vessels. Not that I can think of many of them being in the Mediterranean, but that was her task. Eventually, by 1864, she returned to the United States and was decommissioned. That was the end of her active military career. In 1871, she was recommissioned as a school ship for midshipmen and gunnery school, and she lasted in this particular employment all the way until the 1890s. So, interesting, long, useful career, if not exactly spectacular. By the late 20th century, however, the ship was in bad condition. She had spent decades as an attraction in Baltimore, but it was getting harder and harder to keep her afloat. So decisions had to be made how to repair the vessel. Rebuild the ship completely? Where was the money to come for that? Was she to be broken up? And thus another piece of our maritime history disappear? Ultimately, an interesting and, I have to say, controversial decision was made, in which the ship was hauled out, allowed to dry out completely, and a thickness was routed out of her outer planking. Subsequently, a layer of thinner planking was applied to the outside of the vessel, laid in epoxy. So the vessel that you see nowadays in Baltimore is what can roughly be described as a cold-molded ship. So, is she historically accurate? Well, hard to tell. Obviously, not really, because she is no longer a plank-on-frame vessel. Now she has an outer skin of epoxy over the other planking. But the structure, the original laying structure, is still the original one. She underwent long repairs. She was brought to good state of preservation and was returned as attraction for visitors and tourists to Baltimore. So, of course, the question that probably is in everybody's mind is which vessel is represented by the Artesania Latina kit. That is a question that can easily be answered. And it is not the 1790s vessel. Because look at the stern. The original vessel was built as was the convention of the time, with normal transom stern. This one, however, is the rounded post-Seppings stern on this vessel. So it is very clear that they were using the instruction, the drawings of the 1854 Sloop-of-War rather than the original Constellation. So no doubt this will make a beautiful kit to put together, but it will not be representing the original frigate Constellation of the United States Navy. I think that we have already beaten this particular dead horse for as long as we can, and I wish you a most wonderful day. Thank you ever so much for watching, commenting, perhaps even liking the videos. Thank you, and I shall see you the next time.